NASCAR heads to Iowa this weekend. Ryan Blaney got the win in the Cup race last year. I don't remember watching much of the race. I feel like I saw the end of it. I think I was out to lunch or dinner with my father. It's my father's birthday this weekend, August 2nd. He's turning 62 years old. I'm 28 years old at this time. It's crazy how much time has gone by. I feel like the older I get, the quicker time passes, and it's really been making me want to spend more time with my grandparents and whatnot, especially the ones who live in the area. There's really no excuse. I mean, we get so caught up in our online lives and other lives and whatnot, and sure, we all get busy, but if like you live close to a grandparent or a loved one, if you're not living with them, be sure to visit them as much as you can and make all the memories you can, because once they're gone, they're gone, and they live in your heart forever though after that. So go see your grandparents, your aunts, your uncles, anybody in your family that you don't live with. Go see them. This is Who's That Driver, episode 18. And I'm joined by a very good friend of mine, longtime friend of mine in the NR 2003 community, HB Hardee. HB, how you doing today, brother?
What's going on, man? Good to talk to you. Appreciate you inviting me, being part of your show. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, man, definitely. I like to have as many of my good friends on here as I can. I also like to have people I might not know so well on here. Those ones are interesting, and these ones are interesting too, because there's always something about somebody that you either haven't been told before, or you might have been told once and it's been so long and you forgot about it. So it's good to go dive into the history books.
I'm glad when I get to talk about things of this nature, because I think a lot of people forget kind of where they come from as they progress later in their career. Because at one time we were all young, spry kids with a dream and some old kind of cheap steering wheel.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. I see people in other league groups right now that are like either they're like new, or they've been on controller or keyboard for so long and they're finally making the jump to wheel, and it's so much more affordable for them now to get like a G29 920 as like the entry level Logitech wheel, because they always have them on sale now for around 250 $200. So it's really easy to get a good Logitech wheel as opposed to getting stuck with like an entry level Thrustmaster wheel or something else that has like two dinky plastic pedals. Even though the Logitech pedals aren't that great themselves, they're still way better than dinky plastic.
Right, yep.
So looking at my weekend review, I've raced, well, let's see, we had Fast Sunday. Mondays to Thunder was Monday. I did broadcasting Tuesday at Hobo, which you were in the race there. And then I ran at Fuel on Wednesday night. Didn't get to run Bomb Squad this week. I was wiped out, tired after working almost a 10-hour shift yesterday. My coworker's on his vacation that he takes once a year. So I'm busting my ass at work, running around the warehouse doing two people's jobs in one day. Getting that OT though, so can't complain too much. But did good at Fast on Sunday. Didn't get the strategy quite right at Indianapolis. Stayed out under a couple quick yellows we had early. Ended up staying out under all three of them. I should have pit on the last one, because then Josh Moyers was able to get a bit of a tire advantage, and he was able to get by me right before it was time for me to pit. And then when I pit and I came out, I got stuck behind a group of guys that had yet to pit, because they had pit under caution before, so they were still good on gas. And I got stuck behind him because it was Indy, and you really need someone's draft help, even if you get a run off a 2 or 4 to make a move. So I got held up a little bit, so my undercut didn't really pan out, and it wasn't much of an undercut anyway. I think we only had like half a second of fall off on that track. So Josh came out after his pit stop, and I just was stuck following him again. I tried to do another undercut, and he pit, I think, sooner that time because we were at the end of the race, and again came out behind him. Gave it everything I had, but P2 was the result. Monday was a little more fun. It was Mondays to Thunder's SummerSlam, and so SummerSlam HB, they basically let you do whatever you want without driving backwards or just sitting on the track and stuff like that. So it's basically kind of like a demo derby type of thing.
Oh
Um,
wow.
I had clinched the championship surprisingly a week before. I'm surprised people weren't gunning for me more, because usually when you have a wreck 'em up series, people always like to go after whoever the points leader is. But so
Oh yeah, for sure.
we ran Seekonk, and then we ran this spoof Martinsville track where it's Martinsville, but it has a little more banking and there's a jump at the start finish line. So we were having fun. There was one restart where I got into the back of the guy going over the jump, and it like kicked his car up in the air, and he almost did a backflip. So that was pretty funny. But Seekonk, I have raced in NR 3 times total. Once was way back in like early 2016, back when I had no idea what I was doing on controller. And then there was another time last year, and I had the lead, but I got clipped into somebody else's mess when I was going by them, and it spun me out from first and dropped me to third. And that track was, the setup was so tight, it was hard to get back by anybody. So I ended up finishing, I believe, second or third in that one. So the SummerSlam race Monday, I wanted to win it because I didn't know when I might ever see a league run this track again. Even if it was a demo thing, I wanted to get it done. And I had a really good lead. And then coming to 2 to go, going through 3 and 4, someone had spun and they turned down and clipped me. So I looped it, got back going, and second place barely drove by me. Now, thankfully, it was someone who wasn't too fast, and I was able to just get back to their bumper on the last lap, and I just dumped them going through 3 to win the race.
Wow.
It was legal. So I did it. I got my hometown track win, because that's the track closest to me, Seekonk Speedway. It's probably about half an hour, 35-minute drive from me. So I'm
That
happy
always
to get
means just
that.
a little bit more.
Oh yeah, yeah, happy to get it. And I sure as hell wasn't gonna let someone taking me out be the cost, but I knew it was probably coming, because man, like it was dicey. How did you think your race went Tuesday at Hobo? I know from the booth it looked like there were some other guys that were more consistently going for the lead, but it looked like you had a great day regardless, always around the top 5.
Yeah, so it went good. I was working with KJ, and Keith most of the race. Um, car was pretty quick. I think I was probably being too easy on it. I definitely could have been up in the top 3 for most of the race, but I really didn't want to push anything, risk a super long run like we ended up having there. Um, the car was good. It was probably a little bit tighter than I would have liked, but I kept it just a little bit on the tight side just in case we had back to back cautions. I think I would have been a lot better placed. The final pit stop we took, green flag pit stop, I went in and took 2, thinking, trying to split it and trying to just coast enough at the end to finish up in the top 3 or so with KJ. And as soon as we got on pit road and got in the pit box, a caution came out. So it didn't click when it first came out because I was so worried about trying to get off pit road to hit that extra box and take the other 2 tires, and just come back out, let everybody cycle through. We came back out. I think I was third or so, second or third, and we had an option to pit. I really should have went in and took the other 2 tires, my 2 lefts. It would have put me back behind KJ and Keith, which is ultimately where I finished. But it felt like it would have given me a lot better chance to gun for a podium finish rather than just having to settle for the only 2 guys with better tires past me. But overall, it was a good race. It was fun. Still trying to get back fully in the swing of things with running um, full time in NR like I used to. But it was definitely a good change up from the likes of Dover and things of that nature of the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, right on. I mean, indie game track's such a fun track, but you have to set it up really loose. It's like Pocono in its own way too. Pocono and Indy, I'd say, are the 2 tracks where I like to run a 6 -2 caster, so that the wheel is basically just straight or barely turn into the right through the corner, and then I'm just like hard cranking it to the right to keep it straight on the straightaway. Those are the 2 tracks I like to run that caster setting at. I used to run it more at other places because Joven used to run 6 -2 all the time, and I would just get his setups and then like make adjustments off that. So we were running like 6-2 at a lot of places. But when I started making my own stuff, I found out that I really like being able to control my wheel input more steady. And for that, I run a 1-2 caster at pretty much almost all the cookie cutters. So I have a lot more control over my wheel inputs now. That does make it probably a little more snug, and it doesn't turn as well. And I have to change other things to make it loose, but it's more comfortable for me to know that I can kind of control my car's trajectory at a lot of places using that. So we ran in the Thursday before a hobo at Bomb Squad, and it was me, Keith, Nelly, Brain, Magoo. I forget who else was there. Terry was there, and I think I might be missing somebody. But Keith and I were up front pretty much after like 10 laps. We would start to inch away from Nelly, and he was just kind of following me the whole time. I got a little loose going in the one. I had the right rear up to almost 270, and it was getting dicey coming off the corner, so I had to back it down a little bit. But so we got to a green flag stop. We were fine coming off pit road because coming off of pit road is its own battle there. We saw a couple guys at Hobo. They spun out. Herman about lost it on 2 occasions on the same lap. And then Keith got like an opportunity to pass me going in the one in the Bomb Squad race. Passed me, cleared up off of one, and around he starts to go. He almost caught it, then he caught it again, and then he wrecked. And I was like, yeah, that clean air is a doozy, Keith. And he's like, yeah, it probably doesn't help that I'm high right now. And I was like, yeah, probably not. Keith likes
Yeah, yeah, that sounds about right.
likes to likes to smoke and drink his alcohol. So he
But yeah,
it's
Indy's a lot of fun. I find myself running like you. Most tracks running a 6-2. However, I think for Indy, I run a 6 flat. I want to say. I prefer like that little wheel a little bit more to the right down the straightaways. I feel like it gives me a lot better for, fighting understeer, getting into the corner a little bit looser because it's the only track that your left rear is not just yellow but it's red. Um, and it's normal. There was a lot of times when I was pushing, trying to get back up to the front, that it was nothing to have like a 60-degree split. Right front be 220, right rear be 280, 270, 280.
oh yeah.
But I found that it helped me be able to keep it off the wall and to keep the right rear more controllable when it was burning off if I ran the 6 flat because it gave me a lot of extra backward steer.
Yeah, Pocono and Indy, to your point, those are the two tracks where I'm running like a 35 degree split on the right side from the right front to the right rear. And then on the left side, it's like a 45 degree split. Those are the two tracks where it's like, yeah, that's normal. You want it to be that big of a change. It's funny. There's a lot of, there's fuel. There's like a open setup manual that tells you like how to balance the temps and stuff, and I feel like sometimes it can be misinterpreted because people think, oh, like I want my rear tire temp to be closer to my right front tire temp. And it's like, well, yeah, at the end of the run you do, not at the beginning of the run. At the beginning of the run, you want that right rear as hotter than the right front as you can handle it. So then by the end of the run, like that right front is almost equal to the right front. I say right front twice, right rear to right front. You know what I'm
Yeah,
talking about.
I got you.
But and then like there are some tracks where you actually want to be pushing the right front pretty much the whole time because you slow down so much and then get back on the gas, and then you're on the gas for so long. Tracks that come to mind are North Carolina and Darlington, where you kind of want to burn the right front off more if you can while still being fast, because otherwise the right rear just if the right rear burns off more, next thing you know you're fighting to put any power down the whole run because the right rear is just falling off the car.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of people can have issues with it because you go to the likes of Dover or Richmond where you're wanting to burn the right front to save the right rear because you're when your right rear gets burnt, you're going to loop it. I mean, it's almost a given. If you're not able to control getting the power to the track, You go from there to the very next week to Indy, which is the absolute complete opposite, where you want to burn the right rear to keep the car out of the wall. Because if you don't, you're going to push and push, and you won't be able to get into the gas. Not because you can't get power to the ground for risk of spinning; it's you can't get power to the ground for risk of taking a dead right 90-degree into the wall.
Yeah, and I think that's why Dover is the track I struggle at the most. Something with the concrete too, about Dover game track, just it's such a struggle for me. I've never been really good about throttle modulation outside of road courses. So when I go to like a game track like Dover or North Carolina, I have to like really focus on it. I feel like I've gotten a little better at it, but like a year ago we ran Dover and Tyler Mallon and Joven were so much better than me. I think we had a long run at one point in the race, and by the end of the race, I was third, but I was about to get lapped, and they were bumper to bumper like the whole race. Like I was just missing something after like the halfway through the run. I was just missing something by about 3/10 a lap. Um, because I just burned the right rear off, and I'm just struggling to put any throttle into it. But so Wednesday at Fuel, it was their season 6 finale. I wasn't in contention because I came back late. But we ran Indy a week ago, and then we ran Iowa this week. I was able to get both wins. I had some really good competition from somebody I haven't raced against before, Jolene Sims. They were really fast at Iowa. They were up my bumper pretty much the whole race, and they even got by me at one point after about a side by side battle for 5 laps. My setup was kind of weird. Ran that track last year. It was Iowa Night FSC. Last year, I felt fine, and there was no one really close to me last year. But this year, I was happy that there were people closer to me. But my setup was doing something that I hadn't really experienced before. So I had something wrong with my balance somewhere. It would be loose going in, which I liked, and then it was loose in the center, and I was able to get back on the gas really quickly and carry a lot of speed through the center. But then when I would come off the corner, and this really only happened off at two. When I would come off at two, I don't know if I wasn't turning like that extra 5 degrees I needed to, but it would start to feel tight as I was coming up off the corner. And then after like 15 or 20 laps, my right rear was burning off more, so it would get pushed loose, and I was really not having fun with that. Um, I remember trying to raise the track bar click to see if just that one click would help me, and all it did was make my problem worse once the right rear wore out. My setup this week compared to a year ago, I moved a ton of weight back because I saw people were getting more speed consistently. It was only about half a tenth to a tenth more speed that people were getting. But so I wanted to have that little bit of extra mid corner speed to help myself defend. And all it did was make me kind of crazy loose on exit. But we got some timely yellows in some places after we were good to go on fuel. And so once I had enough fuel to make it to the end, we had a caution come out. I had about 15 gallons in the car, and I just took my track bar and jacked it up to 10. And I was able to hold on from there. I probably could have gone even higher. The tires took about 8 laps to heat up to like ideal temperature. So you were able to pretty much push the hell out of it for those first 8 laps.
I feel Iowa's one of those kind of pseudo. It'll get you if you're not careful mixtures between Richmond and Dover. You've got to kind of prepare and kind of know what it is long run, because it can get you if you're not consistent. If you overdrive it in or get into it too early coming out, you're either going into the wall, or if you're not managing your temps, you're going around to the infield.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get into you and how you got into racing first off. So, just tell the people listening at home what got you into motorsports, who your first favorite driver was, who it is now, if it's changed. So, you and me, we've been around about 30 years here, so my favorite drivers changed, of course, a couple times with people retiring and whatnot, and then your favorite form of racing.
So I got into racing. My dad and I used to run RC cars. There was a circuit around North Carolina where they had different tracks, kind of the rallycross style of RC cars, and they were gas powered and nitro and battery, of course. And we went all over the state of North Carolina when I was 5, 6, and 7 driving RC cars. I would race in the adult class and won numerous championships. It turned out where I went with him and tagging along and he raced to, he was kind of my pit crew. to where I raced. He did all the fueling and all the tires and all the adjustments and all this, that, and the other. Um, so I had a knack for racing, and one of the classes I ran, you could paint a plastic body style and put it on your car, and I ran a 18 Bobby Labonte interstate batteries um, scheme. That was, I don't know what it was, but the 18 interstate batteries green car was just great. I loved it when I was little. So when I got into racing, of course, Dad was always into racing his whole life. I supported and cheered for Bobby Labonte, even though I had absolutely no idea what was going on. And
Hmm.
then as I kind of got older, it changed to uh, the five Kellogg's car that Kyle Busch used to run back when he was still running Xfinity and Busch and all that. So I've been kind of a big supporter of Kyle Busch even through his hardships the last couple of years. But um, ultimately, Dad, as time went on, got into racing. At nighttime when I was playing Call of Duty or whatever on the GameCube or PlayStation 2, he would be in the living room on his monitor with his wheel, and he'd race pretty much every night. And I kind of drew more away from Call of Duty to, hey, Dad, what's that? Can I drive? Can I race? Can I try this? Can I try that? And he kind of let me over time. And that's where my curiosity grew for the game until finally he got tired of me begging and asking and bought me my own set of stuff. But as of late, I've been hoping that Kyle Busch turns it around with RCR. I'm not too optimistic until I heard the statement made by Childress. I'm sure that's kind of gone around after the Dover race, which I hope
Mm.
actually changes. But kind of Kyle Busch, William Byron. I used to go to Liberty, so seeing somebody rock a scheme like that's actually pretty cool. If I had to pick two drivers to support, that's kind of be my two right now.
I gotcha. Yeah, I mean, this time last year was when RCR started to step it up. Indy, I think, was the first race last year where it was like, hey, they had speed, and I mean, before that, last year at this time, they weren't even really close. Like, I don't think Kyle was even qualifying in the top 10, in June or July last year. I mean, he's been doing good qualifying every week, but it just something always happens, and I hate seeing it too. I've been a KB fan ever since. Um, he had that battle with Larson at Chicagoland that one year where they were both in the wall, and all the fans were booing him, and he did the like wiping his eye thing to the camera, and he basically
Oh
called
man, I
called all the
remember that.
fans out. Yeah, he called all the fans out, and it was like, if you didn't like that, don't even watch. And at that point, I was like, yeah, I'm a KB supporter now. Like, that was great.
Yep, and see, I love that when I was little. Now a couple years later, I'm like, that probably wasn't a good PR move,
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, that's kind of where I loved and supported when he changed to the M&M scheme for the longest time when I started racing. I ran either the yellow racing with Jesus scheme or I ran an M&M scheme of some capacity, and that went for like long years and years.
Yeah, I will say to your thing about being a Bobby fan, whatever it was with the scheme that you liked. I mean, I remember Tyler Mallon went on another podcast that is sadly not a thing anymore. It's called the McBasket Cast, but Tyler was able to go on it. I went on it, and a couple of MOT guys were on it and such. So it happened. He was doing it. Tristan Grace is his name. Tristan was doing the show last year when he had time in summer. But on his episode with Tristan, Tyler said that he gravitated towards the 18 because he liked the color green. So that was like how he became a Bobby fan, was he liked the color green. So it was kind of like a silly little thing. So I don't know if you've liked the color green, but um it could have been something like that. But I will say the 2003 Interstate Battery scheme is one of my favorite paint schemes of all time. Just all the rough, jagged edges on the side, like the cars being ripped open. That's another reason I like Harvick's 2003 GM Goodrich scheme for the same reason. It just looks like the car is being ripped open. I really like the schemes from that era.
I think it had something to do with the lightning that went down the sides. I honestly, I could not tell you. I was so young. It's been so long ago, but it was something about it caught my eye. And I think I still have the plastic body that we ran way back when in a box, kind of put up as a one of those sentimental chairs kind of deals.
Right on. All right, well, so let's dive into NR 2003. You kind of touched on it a little bit there. You saw your dad, Danny, was racing at night almost every night. So how did you get into NR, and when were you finally able to try it out?
So it was in the late 2000s, probably 2007, maybe 6, 7, 8, somewhere in there. He finally got tired of me bugging him, and at that time he was running one of the old Momos that had the two plastic pedals.
Mm-hmm.
He handed me down his old Momo, and he bought a G27, which at that time was like heaven's gift of racing at that time. So he got it. I think it was kind of his excuse to uh, to get mama to let him spend the money for something like that, because those were crazy expensive back in the day. But he let me get it. He was racing at a place called Revolution Racing League. Him and Sean Romero, Maverick Morrow, a couple guys like that, were running it. And he got me in. I didn't know anything about anything. He kind of got me set up. And the very first race I ran was Daytona opening season, first race of the year. Before he let me even think about racing with them, he made me get in a practice session and run 100 laps, um, to the point where he'd come in and stand behind me and watch. Okay, you can hold it consistent for 10, 15, 20 laps. All right, now you're going to do it. Now do a pit stop. So it was almost like military boot camp is the best way I could compare it.
How old were you at
So
the
that
time?
I was 10, 11 maybe.
Okay.
So you can imagine this big guy standing behind me just with his arms crossed, watching and judging me as I was racing. But he taught me about getting in the single player mode and changing the AI to a certain speed where I can practice bump draft and just being around other cars so I wasn't dangerous, and kind of seeing how people are going to run and expect it from the same. So after doing that for a week or two, to where he didn't want me to embarrass myself or cause any problems because he was an admin. I ran. It was Daytona, and I remember it was crazy cringy now looking back at it. But there was a big wreck with like 10 to go, and of course he was the 03 and I was the 30, and I made it through the wreck. How, I couldn't tell you, other than it was just Jesus took the wheel and got me through it because I didn't know what I was doing. And we got through it. I was in like third, and I just yelled on the old TeamSpeak 2 at the time, and I said that 30 made it through, which was not right because he fussed at me talking about people got wrecked. That's not right, so on and so forth. So I was like, well, that was a mistake. But I ended up finishing third that race, and I think I've got a picture of it somewhere. Um, and then from the weeks there on out following, I had to run X amount of laps before he let me get in and run. And if I had not run that laps and done all my homework and done all my chores around the house, I wasn't able to race.
I gotcha. And yeah, the AI are great to practice against because if you get into an AI, you just bounce off of them and spin out because they're bricks. But online, if you get into somebody, you wreck the other guy, not really yourself. So it's great to practice against the AI in that regard because if you can practice consistently staying off an AI, then you'll be able to consistently stay off of a player. Because you have to typically give yourself a little bit more room against the AI because oh, if I even glance a touch off this guy's quarter panel, it's probably going to spin me out down the track. But if I get too close to someone online, I'm gonna just netcode them and they're gonna get dumped. What mod was that, by the way, for that league at the time?
I want to say it was the Car Tomorrow, the COT mod,
Okay,
was the
I think
first
there were two of
first one
them.
I started running.
Was he the SS Net or something else? I think.
SSNet, yep, that's what it
Okay,
was. Yep.
all right, right on. So were you able to get your first league win there at that league, or did it come a little bit later once you had a little more seat time under your belt?
It was in that league. I don't think it was that year. I think it was probably the following year. I got my first league win in a heat race for running a late model mod there at Dover. That was my first win, and I've got a picture of it of me doing a burnout. They had like a heat style race where, or a league where you ran two or three heat races depending on how many people, and then you inverted based on that. But that was the first one I ever got, was a heat race at Dover.
Did you know how to do a burnout? Had you done any burnout practice?
I had no idea. I could wreck well by that point, and I knew how to spin out pretty well, but how to do it efficiently and properly, no, I had no idea.
So it's a funny little tie-in for that one. I remember when Ty Gibbs made his Xfinity debut, and they were running the Daytona Road Course because they couldn't go to Cali yet, still because of COVID. So he ran the Daytona Road Course, and he was really good on the road courses, and he was able to win in his first start. Now he hadn't even run ARCA yet and won a race in ARCA, so he had no idea how to do a burnout. So I just remember sitting there like, huh, yeah, I think I just screwed around as a kid all the time, and I already kind of knew how to do a burnout before I like actually got to do a burnout. I never thought about, oh yeah, like some people they have to figure out how to do a burnout because in real late models and stuff they don't let you do a burnout because you're going to keep that engine and all that stuff for like future races, so you can't do anything to hurt the engine. It's not until you get to like the top levels that you can afford to put that strain on the engine because you have the money to buy a new one.
See, I remember it because back then, of course, with me being young and a rookie, I ran a bunch of assistance, stability and traction and all that to kind of help me out because I wasn't too worried about saving tires at that time. I was worrying about finishing races. So I remember going around and I was shaking because my adrenaline was pumping so hard because I had just won and I was all over the place and emotionally excited and tried to get up because they were like, do a burnout. And I tried, but I had stability on. So I just made big ovals in front of the flag line.
Yeah, yeah, that's true too. Yeah, if you have stability or traction on, it's the same as trying to do a burnout on a track with a lot of grip. I know Fuel, when we ran Indy last week, we ran Indy 2014, and I had such a long gear because I had a long first gear for restarts. I didn't have like a short gear for pit road or anything. But I was trying to do a burnout, and I just couldn't. There was too much grip. So then all I'm really doing is I'm doing like these like long spins like across the line, and I'm not even really getting a circle going or any traction. Like I'm just doing these long like back and forth like wave motions, like you're tossing like something in a bowl. You're just like kind of tossing it back and forth. It's sliding up and down like the corners, and I'm not really getting any smoke to go anywhere. So there was a broadcast, and I was like watching, and I was like, yeah, the track has way too much grip. Like I was like, man, I should have just popped it in reverse and then threw it in first gear because that usually works. If you just throw it in reverse, slam it in the reverse, get up to like 30 miles an hour, and just throw it back in first, usually the revs pick up, and it just lets you do like a backward slide, and the tires just spin, and it creates a huge amount of smoke. So it looks really cool. But I wasn't thinking of that at the time.
All right, or you have to pick some random patch of grass somewhere on the track so you can
Yeah,
actually in a circle.
yeah, the grass usually helps. I think we did that at Mexico. I did that when we ran Mexico at fast. I had to use the grass to help me out because there was again too much grip. So what are you gonna do? Um,
Yep.
so your dad was your mentor, obviously, because he got you into the game and all that. What was one thing you struggled with a lot that he was really able to help you out with?
Trail braking. I was really, really bad about dragging the brake or trail braking. Trail braking. He got it from KJ or Julian back when he was, in his younger years of racing. I had a very hard time with being consistent at places like Richmond or Dover. Maybe not so much Bristol, where it requires a lot of brake initially, but the places where you don't want to jump on the brake hard because you'll either lose too much speed or you'll spin. I had a problem with being consistent with giving it enough input to slow the car down before hitting an apex, or slowing it down way too early to where I'd lose all the speed, or not slowing down enough to where I loop it mid corner. That was something he kind of sat down and showed me. It took a lot of work and a lot of fine tuning because there's a difference between being good at it and being great at it because consistency is key, and I was not consistent at all with it.
Yeah, I would say trail braking is probably one of my biggest strengths. I remember like no one really even told me about it, I think. I just like randomly was like I was running at Bristol one time at FTF like years ago, and I was like, man, the car's so loose if I just hit the brake or lift. Like what if I like put in input of both? And I was like, "Oh, hey, like this feels great." But I was like really bad at it. Like obviously like I was still kicking the rear end out going into the corner a little bit, but I was able to dive it in deeper and get a little more balance out of it. So I just like, you put the work in and you just slowly learn like how to be consistent at it. But it takes a lot of practice. And I remember I had like kind of just started doing it, and then I took like a 6 month break from the game, and when I came back I had to completely, I didn't even think about it at first, and I was running some tracks and I was like, man, like why do I like why am I off here? Like I don't remember why I'm off here. And then I was like, oh yeah, like I need the trail break. And it took like a month to like kind of get back to where I was. And then I did another like 7 month break, and it was the same thing. It took like another month to get back where I was. But I like finally kind of got it down, and especially now that I have a set of Thrustmaster TLCMs that have the load cell, and I was able to, I've run enough, and I've got enough of the muscle memory in my memory bank that I can take like 2 months off, come back, and it'll take maybe like a week or two to like get back to where I'm at, because I've like just done it so much. Because
Yeah,
it's,
it's one of those things where if you don't lose it, you'll, or I'm sorry, if you don't use it, you'll lose it.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, the trail breaking definitely, because it's such a fine-tuned sense of balance. I remember there are these old Hot Wheel movie cartoons, World Race and Acceleracers, that came out 2003, 2005, and one of them they race in like fictional dimensions and stuff, and one of them's like a metropolis dimension, and the skill for driving in this dimension was balance, and being able to put like proper balance into like throttle, brake, the clutch, all that stuff. You know how they used to have the heel toe and stuff like SVG does it now, the heel toe braking and all that stuff. And like you have to be smooth and balanced with it, and then in turn you increase your car's balance. So trail braking is definitely huge at a lot of the technical road courses, and then of course, like you said, some of the short tracks like Richmond, Martinsville. I'm sure there's a few tracks I might be forgetting that it works at. Bristol, I know. I think you can kind of just lift. Bristol, you just kind of lift. One thing too that I've noticed that is really helpful at like the cookie cutters is when you're going into the corner, instead of just completely lifting off the gas, you're better off lifting to like 30%, because it keeps some of the throttle in the car, and it actually helps like you turn into the corner. Versus like if you just lift, it'll either get really light and spin out, or it'll just get plowing tight. So if you keep a little bit of throttle in it, around 30 to 50%, you like still slow down, but you're able to just go into the corner so much more stable.
Right. I find myself running the cookie cutters. I have my set up to where I can lift fully. When we're in tire saving mode, of lifting fully, especially if I've got a full tank of gas and there's plenty of weight in the rear, that the weight will help push the car down towards the apex, and I can drive it on out. Whereas as we go into a longer fuel run, I'll lift it to, say, like you said, to 20 or 30%. Don't lift it fully, because if I lift all the way, there's no weight in the rear and it's going to loop just about every time. So at that point, the throttle is kind of pushing the car around as opposed to the weight.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So what wheel are you on now? What do you got now? I know you do some iRacing, so I assume you've got some kind of upgrade on you now.
So I upgraded this past week. I've been running the same G27 that I got when I was back in that beginning of high school that Dad bought for me years and years ago. I've been running just a standard G27 since then. So I said, you know what, forget it. I'm just going to upgrade, and I ended up getting a SimMagic direct drive with SimMagic P1000 pedals and a GTS wheel, and it's phenomenal. There's no comparison.
Okay, so it's actually kind of cool that you're talking about direct drive. So I was actually, we had a conversation about wheels and stuff last week when Tyler Stallhood was on the show, and I've heard it from a couple of people, especially Tyler Mallon. If you go from when you go from a centering spring wheel to a direct drive wheel on an R, it feels completely different. Would you agree?
It does. I found, and the best way I can compare it, it doesn't really equate to this conversation, but Julian and I were talking when we were running Dover, and the best way he described when we were working on setups, that he felt like he was driving on top of the track. And to some people, that might sound kind of crazy, but there's a difference between driving the track and being on top of the track. On top of it, meaning you're volatile, you could spin. It just something doesn't feel right. Like when you get out of bed in the morning, you go to work, something's just on your shoulder and you can't figure out what it is. And the best way I can compare or put into words the difference between going from the G27 to this direct drive is it felt like before that I was driving on top of the track, whereas this direct drive feels all the bumps. I can feel the understeer and the oversteer so much better. It feels like it's more in the track.
Okay, yeah. I'm trying to figure out if I like can kind of picture that because I run my G29 with low FFB, so my force feedback is only 8%, and then I run a high centering spring. So unless the track is like high grip wreckers level of gripped up, like I don't really notice the force feedback. It's there. Like I tried turning it off once and I was like, wow, my wheel feels like really loose now for some reason. So like I need the 8%. But like I don't really know if I can like say whether I feel like I'm on top of the track or not. Like I think maybe if I'm like really loose, I could say that yeah, it feels like that because it kind of just comes out from under you. So like if that's what like he means by being on top of the track, like it kind of just like kind of can catch you off guard sometimes versus like when you're in the track and you like you're saying you're able to feel all the bumps and stuff.
So I guess the kind of the content of the conversation was talking about tire pressure. If you crank up tire pressure, it's going to have less grip on the track to where there's less contact. Whereas if you decrease it, your tire's a little bit flatter. You're going to have a little bit more grip. It's going to be more in tuned or more to the track just because there's more surface area. So it just feels like you can feel all the bumps. You can feel your nose. You can feel the rear end a lot easier on the direct drive than you can, the old stuff with the centering spring. And I come from running. I didn't run any centering spring, and I ran 100% steering assist in. I'm not steering assist. 100% force feedback in the profiler, but in game is where I would change my steering, the force feedback. So in NR, I probably ran anywhere between 40 to 70 force feedback, and I always ran a low steering ratio as well. So my wheel was very heavy. It was very hard to turn, but at the same time, it also helped because ran really, really loose setups. So I found I could run and get away with looser setups because of the amount of weight that I was pushing against. If I got too loose, I had a kind of a method or a way of yanking against the weight, and it was really easy to straighten the car out.
Huh, okay. Yeah, very interesting then. So, do you think it'll take you long to adapt on the NR side since you weren't running that centering spring? I think Tyler Mallon said that he was running centering spring and that's why like he tried to go on an R with the new wheel. He got a Moza, I think he told me. And he said he felt like he couldn't even drive his setups anymore because he was so used to the spring.
It is definitely a lot different. I jumped right back into Indy, that we had just run at Hobo that I had run a pretty good amount of laps on that I was familiar with and the different let off points and how I could get away with, getting back into gas on the car. I will tell you that it took a day or so to even get down to comparable lap times I was running, just because it is a completely different feel, even down to the pedals. The pedals are more a lot stiffer, I guess you could say, but there's more range, so you can be a lot more fine and
Mm-hmm.
refined with your inputs. So it's definitely going to take going back to the drawing board when it comes to some setups, but it like anything else, it's just getting used to something new. So
Yeah, absolutely. So I bought these TLCM load cell pedals. Let's see, almost 2.5 years ago now. And the first race I ran them on was for Road America, and I had to tinker. I ended up tinkering the setting later. I ended up increasing the brake force so that I could use less brake and get more brake out of it through the profiler. But the first race I ran at Road America with these pedals, I was in love with the throttle control because I loved having the throttle be stiffer. It wasn't like obviously crazy stiff, but it was stiffer. It had more range. I had more control. I liked that. But then the load cell brake, I hadn't gotten used to it yet because I had just gotten it. And I found myself using, I think, less brake than I could have just because I hadn't fine tuned the brake force and stuff yet. So I was braking earlier for stuff than I could have if I had been still on my Logitech pedals. But I had a lot more throttle control, which I really liked coming off the corners. So it was quite the first race to use those pedals, and I got a little lucky. My closest competitor had an extra pit stop than me. I stretched it on fuel because I wasn't using as much brake, so I was naturally going slower, saving that little bit of gas, and I was able to get the win.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to kind of see how they work out. The pedals work out, especially in the long run. Like you said, I find myself being really enjoying the level of a lot more refined inputs I can put in for getting back on the throttle without jumping back in and burning the tires off because as we all know the pedals like the Logitechs are good, but the range is not very long. So with these pedals having more range, um, it's definitely going to save tires in the long run. It's just a matter of getting used to 'em.
Yeah, and I will say one thing that when you'll see this in practice is when you run road courses. You know how when we downshift, it's good to like push a little throttle into it and then let it go. The great thing about the throttle being stiffer is it comes back quicker. So it comes back that like tenth of a second quicker, and you're able to maintain a lot more balance and slow down. So I feel like, it really helped. The load cells really help out your trail braking, and it'll get you that like one step up on the trail braking scale because they're just stiffer, and since the throttle is especially stiffer, you're able to just trail brake so more efficiently.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to how they're going to be in the long run. Like I said, it's just going to be having to relearn because all of my setups, the way that I set up cars and everything now is going to change. It's going to have to going back to the drawing boards and finding that fine tune point again.
So you mentioned the some of your wheel settings there with the force feedback and lack of centering spring. Now I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but you used to run 200 degrees of rotation or something, right? Or was it 180?
I ran 200.
Okay, and were you running 100% linearity? I forget if it was 100 or
Yes, yeah, I run
okay.
100 linearity or
Have
will used to.
have you changed to something new now with this new wheel?
So I still have it the same as I did, just trying to get a basis or a starting point um, to get back into it. As time goes on, I'm sure I'm going to play with it a little bit. Um, I may go up in rotation depending on how it feels. It may change on each track. Linearity is probably going to be something I won't tweak for a long while, um, as it's going to give me a good foundation. But as time goes on, I may drop it back 10, may drop it back 20, or I may drop it back to 0 and just kind of throw stuff at the wall to see what sticks. But yeah, that's something I'm going to have to work on.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't touched settings in a long time, other than my centering spring when I got the new G29. It was naturally a lot looser feel because my old G29, I always ran the centering spring at 50, but when I tried to run the new G29 at 50, it felt really loose. And I was like, oh, I wonder if this is because I like had burned all the oil out of the old one, so the old one like wasn't greased up anymore, so it was naturally tighter because everything was just kind of grinding against each other, and I could hear it sometimes too. It would squeak at me and stuff like that. So when I got the new one, I had to crank it up. I tried 100. I didn't like 100. 100 felt too stiff. So then I tried 80, and 80 felt like kind of good, but not too good. And then I was like, I'm just gonna go to 90. So then I went to 90, and now it feels great. So
Yeah, everybody's kind of got their own way of not only wheel settings, but the way they set up their wheel and their inputs will dictate how they set up their car and also how they drive their car. I think that's why people that run fixed setups kind of everybody has their own way about it.
all right, so let's get into a little bit of drama, but being nice about the drama. Um, I always ask this question usually with humor, but knowing how you got into the game, I'll phrase it like this: What was your first confrontation with another driver in the game, and how did your dad kind of help you like navigate through that stuff?
One of the first confrontations, at least that I can remember, was actually with Randall. It was a
With
Talladega,
Randall?
or
Okay.
it was a super speedway race. I don't remember if it was Talladega or Daytona, but it took me years to get a super speedway win. I don't know what it was about those tracks, but I could win everywhere on any given night. But super speedways were just the bane of my existence. And I remember we were going down the back stretch on the last or the second to last lap, and we ended up getting in a wreck going into three. I don't remember if he bumped me, I bumped him, somebody bumped us, but I remember us wrecking, and he and I kind of went at it. Not fussing and raising Cain at each other because Dad was in there, so I wouldn't dare say anything like that if I wanted to come back and race.
Yeah.
But I remember we kind of had it out a little bit, and we had some words, but it was nothing too crazy. Just because I was always trying to chase a super speedway win because they were so few and far between for me.
Okay. Who would you say your main rival was? Would you say it was someone else that was new, or would you say it was kind of more of like chasing somebody to get to that level?
So I always found myself running pretty on par with Randall, and then another teammate I had back in the day. His name was Austin Hakes. We were
Okay.
kind of taken under my dad's wing on our team. It was always the three of us kind of racing each other because there was the front pack, which was always my dad and Sean and Maverick Morrow and a couple of those guys, Joshua Moyers, a couple of those guys who were always quick. And then there was kind of us, I guess you could say, newbies who were all young and dumb and were still trying to find our own place in the league and our own place in the game. So we were always battling each other on any given night.
Okay. What's the maddest your dad got with you? So what's the dumbest thing you did on the track?
Honestly, I can't really remember anything in particular that he was mad, necessarily mad or frustrated about. I can't really think of anything because if there was anything I did or anything dumb that I did, it was more of a coaching. Hey, this is what happened. This is what you need to do. This is how you get better. Now do it. And I always
Okay.
tried my best to replicate it.
Okay. So in that case, what would you say was like maybe like the worst like accident you caused or something like that?
Probably a one of the classic super speedway. You wreck somebody in the front and everybody dies kind of deal.
Okay.
I remember that happened one year, and it took most everybody out, minus the front three, front five. Back in NASCAR's heyday, it wasn't anything for us to have 20 people on a given night. So one of those classic hit somebody when you shouldn't hit somebody and wreck the whole field kind of deals.
Okay. What's a moment between you and myself that you can recall? I know we had. I don't remember any of it for some reason, but we did have a time together in Steve Rada's league, New School Racing.
We did. The best race that I can remember racing with you was when we were running um, the next gen cars at Texas. I think it was even just a practice run, but we were testing out the next gen cars at Texas. Me, you, and Joven, where we were in there racing one night, just did kind of a short race, and we were all battling out with some kind of fixed setup. It was some fixed setup league on that we ran on the weekends together. I remember the new school that was a long time ago now, but I remember running new school and running into you then, way back when. I remember specifically a race at California at Bomb Squad that we ran that you and I were hashing it out up front with Joven, who pitted late, had fresher tires, and was trying to track us down and watching and grinning as you and I were tearing each other's tires off trying to stay up front.
Okay, yeah. Ah, man, I've. It's crazy how many little moments kind of just get buried, um, in time because you start doing so many races and it's like you gotta like I don't know my brain's always been a whirlwind, so like me trying to remember any like kind of battle is like difficult, especially and this is probably maybe a bit of the wrong mindset, but I like having fun, but I also like winning, and I try to remember my wins more if there's big battles in them than when I don't. So I think that's kind of maybe a bit of a like mental thing I do to myself as I kind of like, well, you didn't get the win, so just like take that race and throw it in the memory trash. Like it's, but like usually there are good battles where I'll come up short, and I try to remember those if I can. But there's been so many now that like a lot of the old ones have kind of just been lost to time.
Right. I used to be a lot like that, where if I didn't win, it was a terrible race. I don't want to think about it on to the next race. Where kind of as I've progressed in my career, it's one of those things where I may not win. I may finish top three. Anything out, now it's anything outside of top three was bad. But as long as it was a good race, it was still good. Not saying that winning for the most part isn't the best, but I find myself kind of enjoying the contents of races of you know running, dicing it out with people running three wide, running into corners like we did at Chicagoland in Bond Squad a couple weeks ago with Keith and KJ. After the race, we all three was like, man, that was a good race. It was fun.
Yeah,
Um, so
yeah, and I think I enjoy the stuff in the moment, even if I don't win. Like, oh yeah, like that was a fun battle there. This was fun there. But then, like over time, like I said, I seem to just forget those things really quickly. I will say it. Speaking of recently, when we ran Michigan trucks in the Bomb Squad Fun Run, I thought it was hilarious that I took it four wide on. I think it was you, Keith, and Herman, and Keith got distracted by me being an idiot going four wide down the front stretch. I was absolutely planning the lift before we got to the corner because I wasn't going to take it four wide in the one. But Keith got distracted by me and drifted up the track and wrecked into Herman and then wrecked down into me. And I just thought that was the funniest thing because
I remember that. I
Keith,
remember that.
I was like, Keith, what happened? And he was like, oh, I got distracted by some effing idiot that took it four wide. And I was just sitting there laughing because I was like, yeah, I was going to lift before the corner.
That's pretty good. I remember that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely enjoy a lot of the contents of the races. But it's one of those things where if it goes so long without a good race or without a win, I definitely start to get the itch. Like, all right, now, so you got to pick it up a little bit. Come on now.
Yeah, I mean, I've won. I remember back in the day when we weren't that good. You would go any amount of time without a win. Like sometimes it'd be 3 months, sometimes it'd be 6 months. I mean, I post all my win photos to Facebook, so it's easy to see the gaps in time. And like I think the longest one ever I think was like 6 months or so. Um, and I think I don't really remember what it was like back then because now I usually win at least 5 times a month. Like looking at my year so far, I've won at least 6 races a month, and I've had two or 3 months where I've had 10 or more wins. Last year I went crazy and I was racing, like six almost every night of the week, 6 or 7 races a week. And I think it was September, I won like 20 something races last year. It was ridiculous. I will never race that much again. I mean, I just need to spend time doing some other hobbies like my book writing and stuff. I think I've talked about that a lot on the show. But as long as I can keep my like muscle memory, like I feel pretty good in any given night about being competitive.
I remember those nights of doing absolutely nothing but trying to make sure that I had all my homework done during school, completely not paying attention in class, making sure all my work was done ASAP, getting home, rushing to make sure all of the chores and everything I was required to do was done so that I could sit down 6, 7 days a night, run somewhere doing something and trying my best to win and getting up and doing it the next day.
Oh yeah. Uh, so before I get into a more huge question here for NR stuff, I want to ask a bit of a fun question. I ask all my guests this question. So it's a four-part question. You can answer it in any order. And if you need me to remind you what a part of the question was, feel free to do so. So the question is, what is your favorite mod, favorite track, favorite league to race at, past or present, and your favorite physics type?
So, my favorite league to race at was definitely probably either and they're different parts in my life. It was definitely either RRL way back when I got started, just because it was such a great group of guys, and they were so eager to try to teach and learn, not just myself, but the other people, the other young guys that were in. It was definitely where I kind of began, not necessarily harbored or learned too much about winning, but where it was where I learned the game. And as years progressed, there was RRL, but recently, the last couple of years, has definitely been Bomb Squad. They've been, instead of it being a racing league, it's been more of a brotherhood where it's not so much about winning, but it's about um, the group of guys and having some good hard racing. Of course, winning is part of it. It's never not part of it in this the game or the hobby we have so much fun in, but there's definitely more to it than just getting in running for an hour and a half, 2 hours, getting off and going to bed. Um, like I said, it's more of a family than it is a league. For physics type, I find myself like in the CTS physics. I always loved the NCTS '09 mod years and years ago, but prior to the CWS 15 that everybody used to run. But the NCTS '09 was probably one of my favorites. I can't really tell you why, other than it was a combination of CTS. I found myself running more CTS than anything, just because as a younger me, it was so more forgiving than running a cup.
Mm,
Cup, if you get
absolutely.
your tires super heated or hot, no matter where you are, you're probably pretty much done. Whereas CTS, you're able to run looser cars, or you're able to correct things. You're able to fix your mistakes because you're not running as high speed with so much more downforce. So probably NCTS '09 with the CTS physics will probably rank up there, if not be the top for me throughout my career.
Okay, and then last part there, the favorite track, and it can be a specific version or it can just be like a general answer.
Um, Probably either Game Track Texas. The Game Track Texas has always been my favorite, because back in the heydays of NASCAR, that was where they always had money races with the NASCAR guys that we see now, Harvick and Clint Boyer and all them that Dad used to run in. Probably Game Track Texas, or Charlotte, just because of Charlotte was so close. It's outside of Rockingham. It's the closest track to us, or to me. So Lowe's, as it was back in the day of running the game track. And I think probably my favorite version for Charlotte is the 2011 with the bright yellow walls.
Okay. So fun little story about Charlotte for me. When I was on controller, and even at first when I started on wheel, I don't know what it was about how I was driving turns 3 and 4, but I would always be fine through 1 and 2, and then I would go through 3 and 4 and my car would just stop turning off of turn 4. I don't know what I was doing wrong. I think obviously the answer is, well, you were turning too much and the right front got hot and then you just plowed the wall down off of 4 because 4 was a naturally tighter corner. But it happened all the time. There's a funny clip on my YouTube somewhere buried of me and Joven just screwing around on Charlotte, and I like randomly got tight in turn 4, and then we died flipping in the air because he was on my outside and I just couldn't turn anymore. But that track was always a struggle for me for some reason, and now it's like one of my best tracks. So I couldn't tell you. I was probably just turning too much going through 3 and 4.
Yeah, I remember those days of. Well, I went in the corner, I let off, I got back in the gas. Why did I go up and hit the wall? And I pretty much share the same sentiment as you with your cookie cutters like Lowe's. I remember those days of not really understanding and getting tight, pushing to the wall, that I also struggled with. But as time went on, it slowly became my favorite track. Not just because I can look at that and go, "Oh, well, I was there, I sat in that seat," but as a kid, but it's just kind of a home track feel kind of to it.
Yeah, I would say as time has developed, other than liking a lot of road courses, and I would used to say Watkins Glen is my favorite road course, but now I kind of lean towards Sonoma a little bit more. I like Sonoma because it's short but still very technical, and it's a really good workout track. Even though like I'm not running any high FFB or anything, and it's static sim, but it's quite the workout, and putting a race together there not making any mistakes and coming home with a W is just really fulfilling out of like all the road courses that are on the game for me. But for ovals, I really like Game Track Michigan, and then of course I love Pocono and the newest version of Homestead that was publicly released. It's a Homestead Night BB. I really like that track. It's a 3 groove Homestead, and it's balanced very well. Open setup, it's a little sketchy because you have to, if you're going to run the bottom, you have to make your setup to where it's not too loose, because when you go up the grip lanes, I've learned that in NR, the car doesn't like changing grip lanes. So even if you have them as balanced as possible in the INI to where they should be equal grip with a different grip texture, the car will just want to spin out when it goes from asphalt to concrete. So you have to be really careful if you're going to run a bottom line setup. So generally, actually, what I've learned in like the last year is you're better off running as low as you can in the middle groove, because the middle groove on that Homestead track is the widest groove. So you run the bottom of the middle groove, and then you come up and you barely get into the paint when you come off the corner, and you're like golden. Versus if you try to run the very bottom, and then you're going to risk spinning out when you get those right sides like start to touch the concrete, and then the car is like, hey, I don't really like this, feels weird, and the car wants to spin on you. So
Oh, wow.
that would be probably my current favorite track. Ever since that track came out, I've just started popping wins at Homestead like no tomorrow, and it can be the 3 groove track the way it was made. MOT has like a 2 groove edit that Tate Dorsey did. We've run that twice with 2 different INI settings, and I've won both of those races. So um, I've won, I think, 8 or 9. I've won all but like one of like the last 9 or 10 races I've run on that version, and not all of those races had the same like track INI. So like something with the way the geometry is on that track, I have just like figured it out, and I'm like crazy good there. So it's like probably my favorite right now.
You've got me intrigued with that Homestead track. I might have to check it out.
Yeah. I would say the great thing about Bomb Squad I like, and I especially feel this way now coming back, and I don't know if it maybe is just that it's fun racing and it doesn't count towards anything, and maybe that helps me relax more there. But like I don't care as much about winning when I go there, because I know I'm gonna have a good time, and it's like you said, it's a brotherhood more so than a league. I'm gonna have a good time when I go there. I'm not gonna get mad at anybody. Not anymore. Used to, but not anymore. Like I feel really comfortable there now since I've been able to come back for the like 1100th time. um, but like I know my setups. Like I'm comfortable with my setups, and like however I do is however I do. Nelly got me good at Dover a couple of weeks ago. He had the better strategy, and I stayed out too long because I was worried about a yellow coming out. So I stayed out too long, but I was charging at the end, and but it was it's just fun. Like I know I'll get my wins when I get them, and like I try to do that at other leagues, but you know when you're even though like fast, like I'm gone in the points, but like even when like something small happens, and like if you're dominating, you're like, oh man, like should have had that, like led almost all the laps, like, and then something silly happens. That's when I feel like I get upset. So I try not to get upset unless I like hyper focus on that guy kind of dive bombed me. I don't like that, and it's like, well, he didn't wreck you, so shut up. Like let it
Yeah, I
go.
think another great thing about Bomb Squad and it is just there. It's an open setup league, which are very very hard to find and very few far between these days. A lot of people aren't really looking to run open sets either because they don't have time, or they just prefer fixed setups for everybody being on the same equal playing field, and it's just who's better at managing their tires with track position. They just prefer everybody being on the equal playing field. Whereas I have a harder time driving fixed setups because I've run open setups for 17, 18 years now. So I have a way that I set up my car that I prefer to drive it. And having to change that on any given night can be difficult. So it's open setups, which you don't really see too much anymore.
Yeah. Crazy thing about that is, you said you struggle with the fixed setup stuff. I can do like both. I feel like there's a lot of people who can do both, but there are people who can't. So like Dunlaprad is really fast in fixed setup. Like he is contending for wins wherever he goes. He's consistent top 3 pace. He's been running at Fuel, which is open setup. They have an open setup series and a fixed setup series. But so in the open setup series, he's like not as competitive as I would think he would be, and that's not like a dig at Dunn. Like Dunn's super talented, he knows what he's doing, but I don't know if he's like missing something in his setups or if it's just like a certain level of comfort he's missing. But he doesn't contend for the wins as much as I would have expected he would. And I think about old drivers that we used to see like Derek Justice or Taylor Morgan's, Colin Keister, and they would always smoke people in fixed setup. But I don't know if they ever ran open setup like anywhere. Like I don't really know like what their setup knowledge was, like if they had ever done open setup. Um, the only guy I really remember back then that I knew, like I know now, came from open setup and could still kick your ass in fixed setup was KJ, because I saw KJ run at Insomniacs a couple of times, and it might have been trucks, but he was still fast as hell in the fixed setup environment. And knowing like how loose he runs his stuff at Bomb Squad, like it's like yeah, like he can win in anything. And Randall too. Like Randall's really good with being fast in both. But there seems to be people who like, you know, you're not as comfortable. Like you still have the skills to win in a fixed setup environment, but you're like just not as comfortable in the environment. Would you say that is kind of what I'm getting at here?
Yeah, I'd agree. I definitely think that in the fixed setup stuff I have raced in, I'm still competitive, still running top five, top three, and in a lot of cases still running um, for wins. It's just it takes me a while to kind of get used to the feel because a lot of the tracks that we run nowadays are, um, like you said earlier, have grip lanes or have different nuances to them that I'm not used to. I'm used to running. If it came with the game, that's what we're running. That's just how I grew up. So developing and adapting to the new tracks that have all kinds of grip lanes, and not just that, having to mix in a setup that I didn't make that I can't go, okay, this has a 6+2, or this has 150 rear spring. Let me change that a little bit to adapt my style. I have to adapt it to a setup I was given, which in some cases is harder than others. There are definitely a lot of the times where I'll race most of the race and spend most of the race trying to figure out how it drives. Okay, I can get more in the throttle here. I can save a few degrees of tire temp here. And then a lot of times by the end, where I'm at's where I'm at. In some cases, it's up at the front. In some cases, it's outside the top five or outside the top 10 just because it's taken me a little bit longer to adapt.
Yeah. And so I was getting to a point, and I kind of like derailed it because I was talking about differences of drivers and stuff. But so in 2023, when I got back into fast, I got in too late for the playoffs, but I won. I won the finale, and I won like 5 or 6 other races throughout the summer. There were a couple of races where I didn't make it in time, or I wasn't able to practice. Um, but like it was typically me trying to beat Randall or Moyers or some other guys. And I didn't win a lot out of those like 20-ish races I ran. I won 25%, I guess. So that's still like a pretty good win percentage. But then I got focused on Bomb Squad running open setup, and I was putting in a lot of time grinding my setups every week from January to April, end of April last year, until I was removed. And then when I went back to fixed setup racing, I was like just knocking them out left and right, almost like every race, like 4 out of 5 races, I was just knocking it out like W, W, W. And I was like, I don't know what changed, but something clicked. And I got back into running it fast, and I think I won near two thirds to 3/4, 66 to 75% of the races I ran last year at Fast, I believe were wins, because it was something stupid like 16 or 17 wins out of like 24 races that I ran last year. It was ridiculous. And then this year it's still ridiculous. I've won 12 points races plus the All Star. So in total, that is 12 of 24 points races. So I've won half the points races plus the All Star. So I guess it was crazier last year because I hadn't run as many of the races, but I mean, I've won like three in a row, like three times this year. And then it's just like you get to the super speedway and like yourself, like I just can't win, which at this point, why would I win at a super speedway? No one wants to push me. I win everywhere else.
Right. Yeah, you've definitely. I've seen the kind of progression for it, and it's awesome. I definitely think to your point about switching from open to fixed, if a lot of people sat down and looked at the setup instead of just getting handed one, and saw, you jump in a practice session and you can see that your tire temps are 30 degrees difference, or you get 10 laps in and you're burning the right rear or the right front off or what have you. It it really helps to go, okay, why is this doing this? Because you can back out and look at the garage and say, okay, well, this camber, this caster, this is going to make this burn hotter. I've got a 50 or 100-degree rear spring split, or rear track bar split, so I can see that this is probably going to be a little bit tighter. You can look at the weight, and if you've got a crazy amount of weight back, or you've got a lower spoiler, or if you've got a 200 300 rear spring difference, you can see you're probably going to be loose off the corner. So it's definitely something that it helps, but it doesn't really help because you can't change anything in a fixed setup environment, but it gives you kind of a basis for what to expect as during a run or while you're on track, to see what you need to look out for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I remember reading a quote I think a year ago where I was either reading the quote or I heard it on like Junior's podcast or something, but someone was talking about Mark Martin getting setup info or data from Mark Martin at the time, and Mark said, "Well, I'll give you my data, but you ain't gonna beat me with it." And like kind of like you can give someone a setup in this game and they won't be able to drive it as well as you can because you made the setup. I had that happen with Ryzen Baker. Ryzen's young. He's only 15. He's running NR here and there, and then he's mostly running iRacing. But I remember I gave him a setup from Michigan, and he had to move the weight forward, I think probably 25 or so pounds, and he was still spinning out in it. So, that's like a good comparison of like, yeah, I can give you this setup, but like you probably still gonna have to do stuff to it, and that's what I've been. I told Ike Durbin. So Ike Durbin was racing with us at Fuel at Iowa. He just got a G920 for his first wheel. He controller driver. So I was like, well, here's my setups. You might have to move the weight forward like 4 clicks. Not gonna lie, but like the Iowa setup was actually not a bad setup to give him because it was already on the tight side, and I ended up making it looser from the previous year to where it was actually probably to a point where if I had given him my new setup, he would have had to move that weight forward because that was actually like a lot looser. So, but yeah, it's good for people to like actually look and learn because if you know how to change stuff, it's so much better. Because I remember when I started, Joven just gave me his stuff, and I would just make small tweaks here and there, but I didn't really understand, like, oh, this is like why I need to run these springs with this weight bias. Like, I can correlate all of that now to where I know, like, yeah, if I move this weight back, I might have to raise my rear springs. I don't know, but I will be able to run lower front springs. So you like pick up on stuff as you tweak, and then messing with compression and rebound is stuff like that I didn't do for a long time, and now I know how to mess with that stuff, and it's made my setups even better.
Right. It goes back to the days of, now, like you said, if somebody asks for a setup or somebody wants to try and learn, it's nothing now to toss out a setup with a disclaimer going, "Hey, you're probably not going to like this because you probably drive different than me." And I think back to the days of when I was younger, of everybody had a team of four. Now nobody really has teams. You're not on a team. Teams don't mean a whole much. But back then, you had a team you were assigned with, and you all ran like numbers and like schemes and like colors on your cars. And you were all given, we were giving out a setup every week. Okay, this is the setup. If you need to change it to loosen up, this is what you do. If you need to tighten up, this is what you do. And you just kind of ran with it. And
Hmm.
boy, if anybody happened to send somebody's setup to somebody else, it was absolute You looked at it as a traitor back then, for passing out setups.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. So while we're still on the topic of setups, I want to ask this question because it kind of just popped in my head. Now I remember late last year and early, or no, so late 2023, early 24. Tyler and Joven had discovered, well, Tyler discovered it, I guess. Tyler discovered the setup trick, and Joven doesn't like talking about some of these tricks because he says, well, if people figure out how to do them, you'll never beat them. And it's like, well, I mean, it's not really an exploit. It's not like I'm wall cooling my tires to have an advantage. I mean, if you figure out a setup trick, like go ahead and do it. But so one of the tricks that I heard about, and it only works on a certain type of banking. So I forget what tracks Tyler said it works at, but I think out of the game tracks, it only works at like one, two, or three of them. And so, and he tried it at some other tracks. Joven tried it at Atlanta once and it didn't work. But so the trick is you set the right front spring lower than the left front spring, and you have to change a bunch of other stuff. But if you get it right, you'll be the fastest on the long run because your right front will wear the least. So that was like a trick Tyler discovered in like the previous year. I never tried it because, like I said, it was like it only works at tracks of like a specific banking. I think it has to be like 10 to 13 degrees or something weird like that. Like I don't remember the range, but it's only like a handful of tracks. I think Vegas game track might have been one of them. But I forget the others. So I don't know if you ever
So
heard about
I've
that
heard
one.
of it. I've heard of it, and I tried it at certain tracks, but just to kind of test it out to see. But I remember it having a different feel and a different drive because it was so different than the baseline that I normally ran. That I wasn't a fan of it. Not because of, what was actually going on, but just because it felt so weird. Like it feels. I remember it, and it feels almost like you're featherweight. It feels really light, and it's just it's weird. It's strange, and I could never get behind it to run it consistently.
Okay. Yeah, so my talking about weird feeling setups, my low setup for I think it's for qualifying. When I go out on the track and I go through 3 and 4 the first time, the way that my weight is set up, the car feels like it's teetering back and forth as I go into the corner. So like it feels like the body is like teetering from right front to left rear, and it's just like kind of bouncing a little bit. So the way that I have the springs and the weight, it does that until like the tires heat up. So that's like a kind of like a weird feeling. But I remember the first time I like had made the changes and I went out and I was like, man, the car's like teetering like it's like a top. I'm like, this is weird, but fast as hell in qualifying. So just gotta get through
Right.
that outlap. Have you ever
Yeah.
heard of any other like strange setup quirks that like have made people really fast?
So I've heard of different ones with a mixture of cranking your spoiler down to the lowest it'll go, and then fixing it by having extremely stiff spring rates. I've heard of lowering spring rates really go until you're pretty much scrubbing the ground, and then fixing it and changing it with compression and rebound to change how your car gets in and almost slams to the ground to give you a bunch of downforce. But I've tried some different ones like that, but like I said, they don't really fit me. And I know of a couple of people
Hmm.
that have certain setups set that way that even to some extent still those setups are still out there to this day. But I just wasn't a big fan to run them consistently.
Okay, so the spring compression one, it's interesting you bring that up. So when I run road courses, I run 450 front, 150 rear because it gives me all the front turn that I want, and when I slam the gas, I'm able to pretty much just slam the gas down and I don't have to worry about wheel spin as much. And then I typically run a low front sway bar with no rear sway bar. So I'll run that at almost every track, but I've never heard of the like cranking the compression and rebound stuff up to also like give it that extra downforce. I didn't know that one. Um, so that's an interesting one. The spoiler one sounds pretty crazy too because I feel like that would take a good bit of practice at some of these tracks to be able to run the spoiler at 45 to get that straightaway speed that you would want, but like you would have to like raise the heck out of your springs. Like I can't, like that would take I think some good practice. So now I remember Tyler found another thing after the right front trick, and I don't know if it was one of those two, but he refused to tell me. He's like, "Nope, I'm not telling you." And even Joven was like, "Yeah, I know another trick, and I'm not going to tell anybody because then it makes it not fun." And it's like, well, I think you still have to practice the heck out of it to make it work.
Yeah, I guess the world will never know, huh?
Yeah, I guess we'll never know. All right, so let's get to the question. This is the question I wanted to ask as we get here towards the end, and then we'll get into some exit topics. Um, what race win means the most to you and why?
Probably both of the memorial races. Probably the one initially after Dad had passed. He and I had a lot of good memories together. He and I ran a lot. We always battled a lot. Um, but that was probably, it was a really hard time. And it's still really hard even to today. Um, but probably coming back and winning because I had not run NR for quite a while. I had kind of gotten away with work and with different things. I was still running here and there, but not consistently. So I wanted to come back and at least try to do well for Dad. I had no thought or intention that I would win the race just because I had been away for so long. So I just didn't have that feel when you sit down and
Yeah,
you can push yourself or you can drive a certain way. I was not comfortable in the wheel. I was not comfortable on the track, but I still sat down and said, you know what, here goes nothing, and I ended up winning. And that just I can't really explain the amount of weight that just kind of fell off after I won that race. But it that I've still got the plaque hanging on the wall above my desk here. But that race meant more than any race or any championship I had won in the nearly 20 years I've been doing this.
yeah. I remember being in that race, and it came down to I think I was charging. I forget. I think we had a late restart or two, and I was trying to get back to at least maybe get a top three because I would have loved to have gotten a top three, but I could not get by KJ. KJ's car was as wide as could be. There was no getting by him for third. Like he was going to be on that podium with you and Joven. So I took the fourth. So I couldn't complain about that. It was a great time, and I forget if the first year if it was 50% or not. I know I saw last year's event was a 50%er, but I don't remember if we ran 100 however many laps 50% is. I don't remember if we ran that many. I feel like maybe we did 40% the first year. I don't know if you remember.
I think the first year was 40 and last year was 50.
Yeah. But it's cool to hear that you were able to jump on the track and it had been a while and you were able to do as well as you did. I remember Texas Cup at Bomb Squad was one of the first races I did back after taking one of my like 6-month breaks, and I self spun I think twice in that race, and so I had no sense of feel for cold tires anymore on a game track. Like I was so out of control. It was not a good time. That race is on JTN too. That race was bad though for everybody. That race we had so many cautions, but I was in like 4 of them and I was the cause for 2 of them. So that was not a fun night for me.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. Are we thinking of doing another one this year if the plan works out right? Or I'd love to be able to get back and do another one with y'all. I know we've been doing the fun
Yeah, we're
runs.
I've talked. Well, I haven't talked with Magoo and those boys as much as I did the last 2 years leading up to it. But I'm hoping that we can have some conversations about getting another one going with some more and some bigger prizes and just some different stuff to kind of um, not just try to draw in everybody, but to give it just a little bit of a bigger race kind of feel than just a normal Thursday or Saturday night because it means so much to me and to a lot of the BSR guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really trying to get Randall to come out and race, but that man's so busy these days. It's hard to see him any night but Sunday. So but I would love to get Randall over there to race it up with us.
I'd love to get some of the old guys. I don't know who from the old days still race, but the guys like Maverick or Randall or I know Josh Moores is around and he's extremely proficient in a lot of the racing he does. But just
Hmm.
some of the old faces that come out and even maybe run some throwback schemes that we used to run from years and years ago, just to make it just a little bit better.
Yeah, I know Sean Romero was racing at Fast in 2023, but Randall I think remembers more specifically, but I forget if his wheel died and he hasn't gotten a new wheel or if his like computer died. I forget which one it was. I think it's the wheel. I think Sean had his wheel die and he just hasn't gotten around to getting a new one. You'd have to ask Randall to know that answer for sure. And then Maverick, I don't know what happened to Maverick. I remember Maverick racing FTF all the time, and I think he ran TDR a little bit, and I forget if he ran at Hobo or not. But I have not seen Maverick around in a while. Coincidentally, there is a driver at CCR that runs under the name Maverick, but I believe it's a different person. I'm not
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm not 100 on that one. But yeah, I mean, it would be great if could get some of the old guys to come back and check it out again. I'm in Fuel, and Corbin Wentz just joined the server like last night. I don't know if you recognize that name or not.
Yeah, I recognize it, but I couldn't tell you where I recognize it from.
Okay, yeah, I recognized it, but I didn't remember where I recognized it from either. But I guess he used to race at Fuel and maybe a little bit of Fast back in the day. But he's he said iRacing is too expensive now, so I feel like if yeah, once you get into it, it's not too bad, but like getting into it is like, yeah, it's pricey.
It takes a little bit to get there.
So Randall, I think, got the track wrong in his episode, but so for the record, what was your dad's favorite track?
Texas.
Okay, so it was Texas. I think Randall said he
Yep.
thought it was Kansas.
It was Texas or Michigan. He always loved those two particularly. But for whatever reason, he just loved Texas more, which is why back when they had the Cash Money days with Kevin Harvick and Clint Boyer and some of those guys pre-iRacing, that he did so well and he won all the races he did. It was just something about Texas.
When your dad had his accident, how did NR help him in his rehab process?
So he had his accident back in 2011. I was still really young then, and the accident he had a traumatic brain injury. So it messed with the injury he had specifically messed with a part of his brain that had a lot to do with his balance and had a lot to do with his hand-eye coordination. So he would get motion sick just standing. And over time, through physical therapy and through just recovery and rest that allowed his brain to heal, he had to relearn how to walk. He had to relearn how to talk. He had to relearn everything that made life easy. Um, so after he kind of got those things under his belt, he got back onto the track and having to steer the car, having to input gas, input brake, hit your F4 to look at your tire temps. Okay, my tire temps are too hot. I need to slow down. Having to manage all of the things that we would, I guess, recognize as fine motor skills gave him the best physical therapy he could have than any doctor he could go see. Because one, it was something that he loved, so he enjoyed to do it. He didn't hate to do it, but it was also something that was really beneficial in the long run. So it gave him something to go back to on the track and something to do while also benefiting him. And, for the longest time, he couldn't race a full race. He'd come out and race a few laps. He'd park, probably get sick or get nauseous, sometimes throw up. Um, and then get back out on the track, run another 10 laps. And as time went on, the 10 laps went to 20 and the 20 laps went to 30 till he was getting to the point where he was excited that he finished a race. And then, then he was excited he could finish in the top 10. And then after, a few years, he was back running in the front just like everybody else, just like the old days. There was definitely a change in how he ran. There was definitely a change in some of the things, but racing, I think, in our with BSR or with the different leagues that he ran was the best physical therapy that money well, that money didn't buy, I guess you could say.
Yeah, money didn't buy. What a line right there. Yeah. Was there a period there where he couldn't use one of his legs? I feel like I remember someone telling me if I don't know if
Yeah.
it was him or
So
something else. Yeah. Okay.
for for the longest time, he had a problem with his left leg that he could not feel his foot, and it came from the brain damage he suffered, where he had to wear a boot. He had to wear a kind of a shin thing that went all the way down inside of his shoe, and he found himself dragging his foot more than he did walking. Or he had to, whenever he went to step, he had to have his brain tell his leg, "Okay, now I need to pick my foot up. Now I need to pick my foot up," because if it's something you and I do every day, okay, my feet are going to work, and you don't think anything about it. But to him, he had to take the extra minute to think about it. So there was rehab and trying to get the functioning back in that foot. So he went from running 2 foot some of the time to a lot of 1 foot inputs it, it, that we do now.
Yeah. I mean, I think about it sometimes. I'm like, if I break my left leg, and or like I break my left foot, and I can't use my left foot when I sim race because it's broken and it's gonna hurt to put pressure on it, I'm gonna have a bad time at a lot of tracks because you're
Yeah,
so used to having that foot. Even like if you lose a hand, like I can't use my I'm not gonna be able to use an H pattern anymore if I lose a hand. Like I'm gonna have to hold the wheel with one hand and then like either use buttons or I don't even know if like you would able to really that'd be a pain in the ass. You don't realize some of the stuff you take for granted. And we have a lot of safety stuff that we do at work. We have a safety EHS day once a year, and one year we did a make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with one hand, and boy, talk about a pain in the ass. Like I would not wish it on anybody to lose a hand or a leg or anything. And props to your dad and Robbie, especially Robbie Nices, who he had to amputate, rest his soul, who would race, just go out there and do the best he could with one leg, and still have a great time. So it's cool to see people do that stuff. And I think Josh, I forget if it was, I think Josh told me there was another guy back in the day that he raced with that had to overcome something similar where like he wasn't able to use a leg or something for a long period of time, and he would still do like really good. So like props to all those guys for being able to overcome those difficulties and still have fun and do good.
yeah, life's all about adapting, and the better you make of it, the better longevity you'll have. Is, is the way I look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's dive out of NR here for a little bit. We've got about another 20 minutes here for the show. Um, how many people have you been able to meet from the community?
I don't think I could put a number on that. Um, Between the random track meetups and the BSR guys, and um, over the years, there was a one point when Dad and I drove up to Michigan for Maverick Morrow. He was getting married, and we were best men in his wedding. Um, I couldn't put a number or even a ballpark on the amount of people on it, which I guess kind of speaks for the communities that we all are part of. We all are a part of. And enjoy doing. This game is a game just like every other game, but it's the contents of the game, the relationships you build, the people you meet that make it so good to where you ask questions of like that, and I could say, man, I don't know. I think that in and
Mm-hmm.
of itself kind of speaks for the game and the communities that we've all been a part of.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, what has iRacing been like? What was a draw for iRacing that kind of brought you away from NR for a time? Because I feel like there was a time where maybe you were just doing iRacing and you weren't really doing NR. So what would you say a draw was?
It was just the shiny new thing for me. Yeah, I felt like at one time I had run NR to where a lot of the leagues you run the same tracks, and it's the same mod with the same tracks week in and week out. So it was just something new. It was something different to try out. it was something that a lot of people that were going to because it was the new best thing out, quote unquote. Um, just something different, new to experience to break up the monotony of what I had been doing for years, years and years at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. I've recently been like, maybe I should try iRacing again, and then I'm like, I don't want to pay any money though, so I'm kind of like, there goes that. Like, I don't want to spend the money on it, so it's just kind of toss it right out the bin. But I know a ton of guys that have been running iRacing more. Malin's been running iRacing, pretty much just iRacing lately. I even got a couple of close guys that they'll run fast here and there, but they're mostly just running iRacing now, or they're running Automobilista. They're running go karts on that, and
Okay.
they're having a ton of fun with those. So they've been trying to get me to run those, and I'm just like, like I'm doing other stuff. Like if I'm gonna race, it's just gonna be an NR night. Like I don't want to spend time like trying something else out. I used to feel like that. Like I tinkered around with Project Cars 2 a little bit, just like goofing off, and Dirt Rally. Dirt Rally was pretty fun. I was playing that on controller though. I wasn't playing that on wheel at the time because I had it on my Xbox, so I didn't have it on computer. But Dirt Rally looks like fun, but it's like just like another thing to like I have to set time to run it because even if it's only like a 15-minute segment, like it's like, oh, I don't want to just boot it up for one segment. Like I want to boot it up for a couple hours. So
Right. Yeah, I'm on. I was the same way as I was getting into iRacing. I can say, this many years down the road of jumping in and buying a mod here, buying a track there. I'm not too much um, hard pressed with the money aspect, even though it's bad. As a new somebody starting out on iRacing and having to work up the ranks of every mod and every car, and you get to B class or A class, and you'll have tracks that you bought that you won't ever touch again, ever. I will say it's hard to draw somebody in, whereas NR is a lot more beginner user friendly. But I still kind of have a knack for iRacing. It's enjoyable.
mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Um, any other major hobbies of yours outside of sim racing?
I mean, I find myself enjoying fishing and hunting, things of that nature, just to get away from a little bit, getting out on the water and throwing out some lines and sitting back and doing nothing, or sitting back listening to music. Hunting when hunting season comes around, bird hunting, dove hunting, duck hunting, things of that nature, just to get out and creation and get away from the hustle and bustle of life are two big things for me.
Now, did you go hunting and fishing a lot with your dad?
Yes, yeah. Hunting season, fishing, we would go out catfishing religiously. During the summers, Mama knew we were either going to be racing on the weekend, RC racing somewhere in the state, sometimes in the state of North Carolina, or we'd be on a boat somewhere. So we enjoyed catfishing. When deer season came around, we would either bird hunt together. I found myself, the younger I was, kind of, he'd kill a bird and I'd be his bird dog and go pick it up and bring it back. Or deer hunting. He would We would set up places that were big enough for the two of us, whether it be blinds or stands in the air. We always were doing those things together, because it was about each other's company as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. My father likes to hunt and fish. I never really got into it. I think it's a little bit of my anxiety. Like I have to be doing something I can kind of focus on, and if I'm just like the word relaxed doesn't really seem to exist in my vocabulary, other than when I'm asleep. So like sitting around waiting for a deer to walk by, like would just drive me crazy. Same thing with fishing. I do have some. There are some good memories though of. There's a picture of me when I was like 5 or something, holding up like a nice bass that we caught. So that's like I can kind of see that photo in my head right now, even though I haven't looked at it in forever because it's such like a old moment. I don't remember the moment like from first point of view, but like I remember like the photo. But I remember walking through the woods near my grandfather's pit with my dad back when I was in high school, and I was freezing my ass off because I was so skinny back then. Like I was just skin and bones. So I was just freezing my ass off walking through these like snowy woods like the whole time, just like, can we just get out of here already? Like I'm so cold. But you know, like that's like something like I'll remember forever is just like walking through the woods with them.
Yeah, I definitely, the younger I was, I didn't really understand the whole getting out, sitting somewhere and doing nothing. Fishing, sitting in a boat, in a hot boat in the middle of water, just burning because of how hot the sun was, and just sitting in there and trying to be content, or like you said, sitting in a stand somewhere in the middle of winter and absolutely freezing. But as I got older, I kind of understood it was more about the peaceful moments of quiet, and just kind of the getting away from everything and all the noise that made it so great.
Right on. Yeah, absolutely. What about you mentioned some music. What's your preferred type of music? Country or?
Yeah, country. I prefer like the older country rather than the newer stuff coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Even though there's some pretty decent stuff, but kind of the older country, the Alan Jacksons, things of that nature.
Yeah, my so when I was growing up, my grandfather on my mother's side was like one of the first people to get XM radio that I knew. Like I had no idea what XM radio was until like I was hanging out with him after school one day, and he's like, "Listening to XM." I'm like, "What's XM?" He's like, "Oh, it's satellite radio." So like back then, this was like 2005, 2006 when it first came out. Um, and like you would just if you drove under the trees, like you would lose signal. you know, like they didn't have as many satellites back then, so it was, and it was 20 years ago. Like now you can pretty much go anywhere and you can get XM radio. But so
I
my
remember Dad had a single, pretty much just like that. We had a black F-150, and we got XM in it, and I thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. And I remember riding around thinking the exact same thing.
yeah, yeah, like no commercials either. It would just always be like the music would always be playing, and but he would always have it on either the bluegrass channel or another of the country channels where it would be playing like 60s 70s country, so like Johnny Cash and like a bunch of other guys that I can't remember. If I heard the song I'd be like, oh yeah, I know this song, but like, so I like that kind of country. um there's like one Big and Rich song I think from like 2000 something that I really like, Save a Horse Ride a Cowboy. I think you've probably heard of that one. That's like a early
Yep,
2000s
yep.
classic. That's like my favorite country song of like this era. And then like I think I was like listening to new country around like high school, and I was just like, I don't really care for this. Like I don't know what it is, but it's like too like poppy or something. It's like pop country. I don't know. Couldn't really get into it.
I
So
miss the days of the like the black book you kept in the car that had all the CDs you had to flip through to
oh
pull
yeah.
out and put in the disc. I remember those days.
So I never had something like that, like huge like that. I had like a cup like 10 or so custom CDs like I would make every few months or so as a kid. But so I was working at this shirt printing place back in 2016, and I remember going to lunch with my supervisor at the time, and he had a book like that, and it was full of CDs, and I was like, "Holy cow, dude! Like you got freaking everything in here." And he's like, "Yep." And he freaking opened it up, take a CD out, put it in, and then he was blasting it because he had a sub in the SUV door, the trunk door. So it was blasting the country down to lunch. It was pretty funny looking back.
It's pretty great.
Any movies or TV shows you like to watch?
I've as of late I've been happily, as I sit here with a smile on my face, totally watching Grey's Anatomy with my wife. She's totally into it, and of course, because she's into it, boy, do I have to be into it. So that, but no, that's been good. I enjoyed Game of Thrones. I can't tell you how many times I watched that whole show start to finish over and over and over again. The medieval stuff like that, or knights and all that, boy, I loved. So I can't tell you how many times I watched that.
Right on, right on. Yeah, I never got into Game of Thrones. I don't know. I think it was because was it Netflix or was it HBO?
HBO.
Okay, yeah, we didn't have HBO, so I was never able to get into it. I think if we had it, I definitely would have watched it. Um, but I was watching stuff like South Park, Robot Chicken, Family Guy. Like that's the stuff I was watching in my teenage years. So now I have this wonderful sense of humor. And
I guess you know where to. I guess you know where to pay tribute to, huh?
yeah, yeah, I'll be running a South Park car one of these days probably. They got the Timmy Hill's running a King of the Hill car because I think I think I don't know if they were planning to run it the whole time, but one of the voice actors recently passed away last week. So
Yeah, I
um,
saw that.
yeah, so that's pretty cool that they're. I think they're running the character the actor voice. I think that's the character that's on the front of the car, or the character is on the front of the car, not the actor. But I lost my train of thought. But yeah, that's pretty cool. So also had I've been listening to a little bit of Sabbath and Ozzy lately because Ozzy Osbourne just passed away the other week, so that was pretty big for me.
Right,
Being a
right.
rock and metal guy, a lot of the guys I like that like started their stuff in the '90s and stuff. They're getting up there, like they're in their like they're like they either are my father's age or they're like in their 50s, and it's like, man, like I don't know how many more years they're gonna be making music. I don't know why Metallica still plays. Metallica just keeps going because they bring in the numbers, they bring in the money.
Right, that and like AC/DC, some of those kind.
Yeah, ACDC's still out there touring, but it's like you watch these musicians, they get to a certain age and they're really not moving around anymore. They're kind of just standing there. Like they can still perform great, but they're not moving, so you don't get the same energy. Like I started
Right,
you if you go to like the young bands, like metal bands, like the shows are crazy because it's all people the age of like the band guys, and it's just like mosh pit craziness. And but then like you can go to like a big band show that's been around, like you can go to a Korn or a Metallica show and they'll be moshing and stuff, but like the band's not really moving as much, like other than maybe like a little headbanging because they've just been doing it forever, like they're tired, man.
it's like you see your kind of relevant to your the old retired NASCAR guys coming back and doing one-off races here and there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Casey Mears was trying to hit 500 stars. He ran like a race or two earlier this year, but I haven't seen him since, so I don't know what's going on with that. If he just
We actually went to Rockingham and saw Casey Kane
Oh,
running
nice.
the Xfinity Series. My wife was had completely forgotten about me while he was out there, so that was fun.
Yeah, well, you know what they said about Casey when he came in. He looked like a Sports Illustrated model or something. He always had the
Yeah,
looks.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, so since it's a Friday, we're recording this. I have to say, finally, it's Casey Kane Friday. I don't know if you've ever seen the video with "Rollin'" by Limp Bizkit edited onto it. And it's like it's effing Casey Kane Friday, and it's like a whole thing. It was like a meme video someone made a couple years ago, and then the NASCAR Instagram person made their own like Casey Kane Friday reel for the official NASCAR page on Instagram back when he ran at Rockingham, and I was like, "Yo, this is lit!" Like it's canon that like the meme has been addressed by the NASCAR page. Like that's just awesome. So it's cool seeing
Yep.
like a lot of the people our age are now getting they're getting into social media handling positions for a lot of big companies. So because they all grew up with the same stuff we grew up on, they'll like make references to stuff that we grew up on, and it's like pretty cool to see, you know. Like, oh yeah, like that's our stuff. Like someone else might not get that that's like a little older or younger, but like we get that, so that's cool. So,
Right. Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, I mean that's really all I've got. I guess to maybe round up, if there's any other like cool stories that come to mind for you and your dad, that would be like a good time as like an ender to tell one if you got anything that maybe comes to mind. No pressure though.
I remember, and I can't tell you why it sticks out. There was a race he and I had at Michigan, and we ran 1-2, 1-2 the whole night. And within the closing couple laps, of course he was up front, and I was second. We were up in the both running for championships at that point. It was late in the season. Wins meant a lot because it was with the old points where uh, the better you finish, the better points you got instead of winning a championship or winning a race and being good. And as it went on, we had run one and two the whole race to where we would get tandem, we'd pull away, and we stayed pretty much gone the most of the race while it was green. And I remember he he getting into me or me getting into him, and both of us wrecking, totaling the cars, junk towed the whole nine. And my room was always at the end of the hallway, and he would race in the living room. My room was at the end of the house, so I would race. And if anything happened, I'd get up, I'd walk into the living room, and we talk because that was kind of the commonplace of the house. And I remember us wrecking. I remember being a little bit bummed out because that's at the point in my career where I was like, every race I'm in, I'm going to win. I'm going to be upset. And I knew he was not one that liked to get wrecked because he made sure he gave everybody room until it was go times. He was not a fan of getting wrecked. And I remember going in there thinking we're fixing to fuss each other out. But when I walked in, I remember him turning around. He had a big leather chair, and it sat back, it reclined. It was purple. It was huge. It was terrible. It was ugly. But that was his racing chair for the longest time. And I remember going in and waiting for him to look around because his setup was in the corner. And I remember waiting for him to whip around and see what the look on his face was. And he whipped his head around. He looked at me, I looked at him, and we just busted out laughing just because of what happened, the amount of fun we had because we were talking trash to each other on Whisper all night. But we just busted out laughing. And if there's a moment that I can think of through the whole racing, that's kind of what drove me to do all of the racing and everything I did was moments like that. Um, because looking back on it now with him, tomorrow being his second anniversary of him passing, um, it kind of changes that I wish I had thought more of those moments in the minute, but it makes those moments like that stick out so much more than any championship I ever could have won. Because through the course of the years, I won my fair share of championships, and he won probably twice or more as he did for me, or as he did than I did. And there were times that um, we would talk about it, and he'd talk his fair share of trash. So, but golden moments like that, thinking back, are so much more vivid and so much means so much more than any first place I could have won, no matter where.
Yeah, man, that's great. You were talking before we started recording about being emotional, but you're getting me to tear up a little bit. I mean, that's a great story right there, man. You talk about the stuff sticking out. Um, I have a very pessimistic mind, so but I've been fortunate. A lot of my grandparents are still around, but they're all getting up there. They're all like closing in on 90. But so my grandfather on my mother's side, a funny story I can tell that'll always stick out in my mind is so my grandfather had his own excavating company. So he had the big trucks, he had the excavator, he had like a 1 ton with like the bed and stuff. And I remember in his pit where he kept all his gravel and stuff, while he would do stuff with the excavator, he would let me sit in the 1 ton Chevy Silverado 97. It was called Miss Brittany after my cousin. Red Chevy Silverado truck, like heavy duty truck, with the dump bed and everything. He would let me sit in that, and I would do circles around the piles of gravel. So the fastest I would ever get to would be like 10 miles an hour, and I was like 6, 7 at the time. So like that's how like I was driving before I could drive. That's actually a
Right.
reference. That's a reference to a Hot Wheels movie, by the way. But yeah, I was driving before I could drive. Like I was driving, but I wasn't licensed. But that's like what kids would do on farms and stuff back then. You'd be driving tractors or whatever. But I remember there's this road, and it's still there now. It's all smoothed out now, so it's not a problem now because he built his retirement home down there. So all the roads are smoothed out and whatnot. But there was a road that at the time it was near like this little pond that it would fill up with rainwater. And but so the road was very rugged, and so he was doing something off in the other corner, and he was like, "Hey," he like called me up on the phone. He left one phone in the truck, and he called me up on the other phone, and he told me, "Hey, like, can you drive the 1 ton over to me in the excavator?" And I was like, I think I was 8 or 9 at the time, and I was like, "Yeah, I think I can do that." So I go to drive. And I think he told me, he said, "Don't drive down the road. Drive around the other way." But me thinking, no, I'll be all right. Like, I know what I'm doing. So I drive down the skinny, like, messed up road, and there was this spot where you would ditch yourself if you got into this like rut. So my dumbass drove into the rut and ditched the 1 ton truck. And when I mean ditched, I mean like it sank to the right and I couldn't get the door open. Like, that's how much it had ditched. And I
Wow.
remember he had to come down with the excavator and lift me out. And he was laughing about it though. He was like, "What'd you do?" Like, I was like, I hit the rut, I guess." um, yeah, I can't get out. He's like, "Oh, hang tight. I'll get you at the excavator." So yeah, it's a funny moment that'll live forever.
I remember those kind of moments. I also was blessed to be one of those child drivers where if something needed to be done around the yard, or um, even just getting home from school, they'd hop out, let me hop in the driver's seat, and I'd drive the last 30 yards into the driveway and thought, boy, I was hot stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, before I was able to drive the 1 ton in circles, my dad would let me sit on his lap when I was like 4 and 5, and we would drive down this little like 10 mile an hour dirt road, and he would just let me steer the steering wheel. And because I was a racing guy, I was like very like focused on like just steering the wheel like through the path. So like that was how I got started, like getting into like cars and everything. Like, I don't know like a lot of stuff mechanically about cars, but like how to drive them, like I got it all figured out for the most part. There's probably still stuff to learn on the real life side, but I got it figured out for the most part.
Some good times.
But yeah, I mean that's pretty much do it for here for our time. HB, thank you for joining me. Now is the time to plug all your pages, and I'll be sure to stick them in the description for everybody to check out.
Only page that I really have is Father and Son Sim Racing. It's a Facebook page that Dad and I had started years ago, um, where if he would race and stream, he would do it on YouTube. I do it on Twitch, and we would post our streams on there for everybody to see because it was just something else that he and I could do together. It was something that racing together was great, but we one also wanted to stream, to put our stuff up there, and we thought what better way than to do it for both of us. So even though he's not here anymore to upload his videos, there's still quite a few races that he had run on there that I've since saved and have stashed away to cherish. But I still find myself on certain nights of either streaming to Facebook or some nights streaming to YouTube or Twitch, and um, just kind of recording the the races, both good and bad, as I get back into things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there like I definitely have more good races than I do bad races, but like still, even for us like experienced, knowledgeable, skilled drivers, like there will be bad races. Like, none of us are going to be perfect. Even the robot himself, as I call him, Tyler Mallon, even Tyler will have a race go haywire from time to time. But for him, I mean, he's so hyper focused on how he drives the car and how he sets his stuff up that him usually making a mistake or something is very rare. But like you and me, like we're more apt to maybe have that happen like once a month or something.
Yeah, I definitely find myself having an off week here and there, but still at the same time, it's good to just give more out to the community with trying to keep NR alive. It gives people something to watch or something to see, and maybe even might attract people that don't otherwise really run it, or just some kind of interaction. Any kind of interaction like that's good. So um, it's pretty cool to be able to do something like that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, again, thank you, HB, for coming on. This was Who's That Driver, episode 18. And we'll see who the next one is. This is the second episode in a row that we've done like a 2 week spread, and I think it'll be another 2 weeks before the next one. I've got a busy work week coming up. And I know a lot of the names left on my list are very busy themselves. It is summer, and a lot of people have a lot of people that I'm looking to interview either have a lot of stuff going on or they got kids and they got stuff going on. So, but there are still a good dozen or so people on my immediate list that I would like to get on this show before the year's over. So we'll see who we get next time. And but again, thank you HB for coming on, and a lot of good stories on this episode. I'm sure this will be one that I go back and listen to again in the future myself. So thanks again, man.
Appreciate you inviting me. Appreciate you, letting me be able to talk about kind of where I come from and just the impact that people like my dad had on not just me but this community as a whole. So I'm forever thankful for that.
Absolutely. And thank you to all our listeners as always. I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you again, and thanks for listening. I'll see y'all for the next one.